Dune Prophecy is 6 episodes long, which means that the series is longer than Dune Part 1 and Part 2 put together. So how much do we remember about the movies versus how much we remember about the show? Join me as I revisit Season 1 of Dune Prophecy, a prequel series to the highly successful blockbuster films Dune Part 1 and Part 2 directed by Denis Villeneuve. Is Dune Prophecy as good as Dune Part 1 and Part 2? Before we dive deep into my review of Season 1, Episodes 1, 3, 5, and the finale, ask yourself this. If you watched Dune Prophecy Season 1, what things stand out to you in the story? Forget about action, forget about CGI. What story elements really stick out to you? What are you looking for in Season 2? What are you excited for? And did this show live up to your standards? Comment below, like, and subscribe if you want to hear more from me and more about Dune. My opinions are a little stronger than others on here, but that's because I'm a fan of the films. And if you are too, well then let's talk about it. In this video, we will go through my favorite and least favorite episodes of Dune Prophecy Season 1. We'll talk about some of the highlights, and we'll talk about some of the most egregious examples of what I think are plaguing this series, which is poor writing. I do think that the series could be something really special, but without attachment to director Denis Villeneuve, it doesn't feel a true cohesive part of the Dune-iverse. And speaking of the Dune-iverse, let's get into episode 1, because I'm more worried than ever about the Dune Universe, the Dune-iverse. I'm more worried about the Dune-iverse than ever after watching Dune Prophecy Season 1, Episode 1. I think there's 3 types of people who watch Dune. There's the people who read the books, who are obsessed with everything they've read, the Dune Chronicles, which is the original 6 books written by Frank Herbert. They've read the extended universe, or whatever it's called, written by his son. Some people don't count those books. Some people do. Some people are all in. Some people will eat it all up, and some people want high quality entertainment. I am a little bit of both. I read the Dune Chronicles after having seen Dune Part 2. So my story right here, it goes like this. I saw Dune Part 1 when it came out on HBO Max. It was COVID, it came out on TV, and I watched it, and I remember thinking to myself, like, whoa, I cannot believe, I was kind of bummed that I didn't see it in theaters, basically. But I was all in. I think I had seen pieces of the original Dune film by David Lynch years ago, and I mean, like, it was cool. I was into it. It's super weird, obviously, and I really liked, I think it was the Ixians, or the Philiaxlu. I don't know how to say it. If you do, subscribe, because someone's got to tell me. People are going to kill me in the comments, but, the guy in the tank, oh my god, I love that in the David Lynch's version of the movie. It is so whacked out. I mean, it's a true gem in its own right. But when I saw Dune Part 1, when I saw Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1, I remember thinking, whoa, science fiction is back. I'm one of those guys that I was born in the mid-'80s, so I grew up on the prequels, and I didn't like them, right? Because Star Wars, the original 4, 5, and 6 had come out in the late 90s, right before The Phantom Menace. We got all the re-releases, and me and my friends saw them in theaters. It was a big deal. So we didn't love the prequels. We were into them when they came out, but then, I was just at that age where, like, it was cool not to like Star Wars. And of course, I'm one of those people that now loves the old prequels, in their own way, and doesn't really like the sequels. That's a conversation for another time, but the point is this. Dune brought sci-fi fantasy back. It's like a hard sci-fi fantasy. And it didn't make me read the books. I was still intimidated by the page count. But after seeing Dune Part 2 on 1570 IMAX, so I saw that the AMC Lincoln Square, and I was just absolutely mind blown by Denis Villeneuve's interpretation of the Dune universe. And his vision is so strong, it made me go back and do a deep dive on Denis Villeneuve. I think I had only seen, honestly, Blade Runner 2049 before, so I went back and I watched Prisoners and Sicario. Now I'm a Denis Villeneuve head, and I'm excited to see everything that he's got next, and even to go back, I haven't seen Enemy yet. I want to catch that. So here's how I feel as a Dune fan. Denis Villeneuve brought me Dune. After seeing Dune Part 2, I read the novel, which made me want to read Dune Messiah, because I was excited to see what Denis Villeneuve was going to do next, right? I wanted to read Dune Messiah because I wanted to see the movie in my mind. I was so excited to know, what's he going to do next? So I read the book, I read Dune Messiah. I loved it so much that I read Children of Dune, God Emperor Dune, Heretics of Dune, Chapter House Dune. Now, I do have to admit, the last 200 pages or so of Chapter House Dune is incredibly dense and hard to get through. In fact, the last 2 books, Heretics of Dune and Chapter House Dune, it's all about the Bene Gesserit, and it takes place over 3,000 years in the future after, spoilers, Paul's heir, Leto II, has died. And I believe believe Leto 2, I'll just say this, Leto 2 was alive for a long time, and I'll leave it at that. But the books are interesting. But again, I read the books as a fan of Denis Villeneuve's film interpretation. I'm not even a big book guy. I'm not a book talker, right? Like, I'm a movie guy, but I love the movie so much that it made me go like, let's find out about Dune all the way. Now, I haven't taken it further than the Chronicles, the 6 original books. I haven't read any of his son's books, and I haven't read any of the, I don't care. I'm sure they're interesting, and I hope that if you are someone who read those books, you can just appreciate the fact that I'm kind of speaking as more of a general opinion. I just don't have the time for all those books, but that's also because I'm not a book guy, right? I read all those books because I'm a movie guy, and I was so into those movies. But I think if I was a book guy, I'd probably read it all, and I'd probably love it all. I bet I would like it all, honestly. So, if this show, if Dune Prophecy truly is what you Dune book lovers have been waiting for, if that first episode spoke to you, then that's great. I'm excited for you. And I really do hope that episode 2, which I will be watching, is better. But as of now, episode 1 left me wanting. And so the next thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about, where I'm left, what I'm thinking about, and if I care about anything that I saw. All right. So first, I just really wanted to talk about who I am as a Dune fan. I think that's really important. Next, we're going to go on to what I actually think about the show. Now, I'm not going to get into character names or actors' names. I'm not doing research. I'm just talking from my gut. I'm talking from the heart. I'm talking from memory. I watched this first episode a day ago. And so where I'm coming from is actually, I think, probably quite similar to where a lot of you might be coming from. You watch the show, it's a few days later, you're thinking about it. It's going to come on again in a few days. Do I really want to watch that next episode? Where am I left? What am I wondering about? What happened in the previous episode that I'm excited about finding, out where that's going to go? So let's start with the thing that annoyed me the most about the episode. And I think I'm going to get some pushback on this, but it starts with a quote at the bottom of the screen. Now, I'm pretty sure it's not the Sardaukar that are speaking in the background, where in the Denis Villeneuve films, it was the Sardaukar battle cries that we hear. This is something different. It's also kind of like harrowing, which I get, but it's a quote. It's at the bottom of the screen. There's a second half of the quote. It's exactly the way Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 start. So there's this immediate connection to the films. And to be completely honest, that really bothered me, because while I want this to be connected to the films, I really do. And, in a perfect world, Villeneuve wrote and directed this whole series, and it is an exact interpretation of what, he would have done. But that's not what this is. And so the quote at the beginning kind of bothered me, because that's not how the books begin. The books don't begin with quotes. Now, someone argued with me on Twitter the other day that they do, but that's incorrect. Each chapter begins with an excerpt or a quote from a history or a book or some literature in the Dune-iverse, right? A lot of it is Princess Arulon, her writings and her journals, but it's not a quote, it's not a direct quote or some sort of poetic quote. It's different. And so I felt like this was specifically targeting the connection to the Villeneuve universe, which again, I understand, but I don't think the rest of the show, held up to those standards, because I'm going to jump to my least favorite part of the episode now, which I guess I just already said was the first part, but it's really this next part. There is like a softcore porn scene in the show, and I'm not really I don't have an issue with that per se, but I feel like it degrades the quality of the show. It degrades the quality of the story. I understand that the Bene Gesserit use sex and seduction to control their breeding, and so I understand the purpose of it, but I thought that it was filmed, acted, presented. I thought it was all too oh yeah, hey, sexy, look at these abs. Okay. It was a bit much, and I don't know, it wasn't beautiful. It wasn't presented. I don't know. I thought it was very out of place. Now, another issue I have with the show is the king. Now, I think one of the big problems I have is that he's obviously already controlled by one of these women. So we're not seeing them actually infiltrate or gain any power. It seems like they already have this power. It seems like he's not a true emperor. He's a weak man. His wife is obviously stronger than him. She kind of gives him the look during one of the scenes oh, I can't believe you're not standing up for, XYZ. So we're already there. I don't know why. This has to take 10,000 years to develop. They're already doing it. The sisterhood is already acting as the Bene Gesserit. There's nothing interesting about the development of the sisterhood. We begin it, and the first Mother Superior is dying, but the way she does things is being kept by Valia. So there's no progression, right? So basically the Bene Gesserit as is in the Dune universe 10,000 years later is exactly the same as it was now, as it was, what, 100 years? It's like, it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense. And it's not at least an intriguing story. Like, am I interested to see them develop the sisterhood? Sure, but they already did that. There was a 30-year time jump where it developed even more, and now they wear different color clothes. But it's the same. It's exactly the same because they already had the influence. Now they have more influence, and it looks like they're gonna get a wedding, and now they're gonna have even more influence. But it's the same thing. I don't know. Here's another problem I have with the show. It sniffs its own farts. This is the type of show that already knows it's the next quote-unquote Game of Thrones. It's got all the money. It doesn't have to work for the shots because it's got all this CGI cash. And there's a lot of loud music montages, really cool sweeping camera movements, and I'm watching these people stand in line and this is happening. But like, then we finally get to these dialogue scenes where characters are actually talking to each other, and it is just this boring, slow, oh, what do you think about her? Well, I'm not sure about this one. Oh, but I think that one's good. Well, how about this? And I don't know about you, but I'm not even into Dune for the action and adventure. I stay for the action and adventure, but I come for the story. I haven't found a story yet. Okay, so there's Valia Harkonnen. She has this mission that she's gonna keep things status quo, and some people don't want to do things status quo, and she's willing to kill for it, and she does, and then things remain status quo. And now there's a guy who can burn people with his mind. I don't know. This, honestly, the whole plot, I think it's all over the place. I don't think there's any characters that I'm holding on to or feel like, you know, this is my POV character. Right? We're not really seeing through Valia's eyes. We're not really seeing through the new trainee, the new sister. We're not seeing through anyone's perspective. We're just kind of viewing these things. You know, in Dune, Paul Atreides is our avatar, you know, and we're learning things about Arrakis through him. We're learning things about the Bene Gesserit through him. We're learning things about the Emperor through him. We're learning things about the Atomics through him, right? He's our avatar. In some way, Chani looks like she's becoming the avatar of Dune Part 2 near the end of the film. As Paul turns into Paul Muad'Dib, Emperor, I think that Zendaya's character becomes our avatar. As she's walking away, she's leaving at the end of the movie. We end on her face. She's riding the worm away. I thought that was very interesting. But the perspective, Denis Villeneuve is able to put the viewer's mind into the perspective of here or there. You know, even when we're dealing with the Harkonnens in Getty Prime, there is a perspective. We're with Fade. You know, we're finding things out through Fade. We're learning the Baron's plan through Fade as the Baron tells Fade, hey, listen, I'm thinking about making you the Emperor. That's when we hear it for the first time too, right? In the books, it's different, but in the films, there's always a perspective. In the show, I don't know where the perspective is. And as a fan of film and as a fan of good television, perspective is very, very important. And so I feel a little lost. I don't know what I'm looking forward to. And that is definitely a shame. I will watch next week. I love Dune. I'm gonna watch this whole series, but I don't think I'm gonna like it. I was nervous watching the trailers. I was really nervous watching the trailers because there's nothing good in there. You know, so here's the thing. I wanna love it. I'm gonna keep giving it another shot. I'll probably rewatch this episode before the second one so that I can really feel like I have a grasp on everything, but I have a bad feeling that this is going to continue, and I'm gonna hate the show, and my real fear is that it ruins Dune for others. I can watch Dune Messiah and pretend the show never happened if I don't like it, but if people connect the show to the movies and the show does poorly, I worry. You know, not everyone is a film Twitter head like me, and probably you if you're listening to this, but the general public, they just know Dune. They don't know Denis Villeneuve. There's Dune. They don't know Paul Atreides. They know, you know, Timmy Chalamet. They don't know, you know what I'm saying? Oh, Timmy's in the Dune. So here's the thing. You know, I miss TV of 10 years ago. I miss the good old days. I think you guys do too, right? It's rough. Like, I'm watching these shows chasing the dragon, you know, of top 10 TV, of high quality TV. And we're not getting it. And if you agree, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out. Now, honestly, by the time I got to episode 3, I was starting to get fed up. I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. When we get to episode 5, I really did find that the show found its groove in the penultimate episode. Episode 5 is the strongest of the series, and the finale, in my opinion, is not as good as the 5th episode. let's talk about episode 3. We'll get into episode 5 coming up after that, and then wrap up my thoughts on the series as a whole and where we think season 2 might be going. I'm bored with Dune Prophecy. This show feels like it was made similarly to a lot of shows these days. They took the name, they took the brand, and they said, well, what story can we tell within that brand? I'm not even going to say universe because they're not truly utilizing the Dune universe. This episode didn't even go back to the kingdom. We only focused on the sisters. It wasn't just merely a flashback episode because it was back and forth between the past and the present, but none of it was exciting, none of it was interesting. The most interesting thing that happened is that Tula, spoilers guys, massacres the Atreides, a whole group of Atreides, and she massacres this young boy who's in love with her. And we don't find out if Tula learned a lesson from that, other than she doesn't, at the end of the episode, want to let this young girl go. Maybe I missed something, but massacring people isn't good. So are the Harkonnens good or bad? Because I keep hearing this story about how the Atreides told a lie and it changed the Harkonnens' course in history. But here the Harkonnens are being awful, and Valia keeps telling her family, you guys aren't awful enough. You need to be awful like me. You're not brave enough to be awful. Me and my sister are so horrible. Why don't you see that? We're so mean. We're killers. It's, you know, and her family, her dad is like so annoyed. He's like, oh, we're gonna get in trouble. The Atreides are gonna be so mad. Even when Tula admits to killing all the Atreides, somehow the Harkonnens blame Valia. It's hysterical. It's almost as if we finally found whose POV the show is. I guess the show is Valia's perspective, because there's no way that any of this could have ever gone down this way. Everything that happens in this episode is from Valia's insane, self-aggrandizing perspective. She meets Mother Superior for the first time, and Mother Superior tells her, I think you're super special. I'm so impressed by your evil superpowers, and I think one day you're gonna take over this whole place. So let me show you my super duper secret lair where I use technology that's forbidden. I just met you. I like you a lot. And here's the thing. You are gonna be my number one. Now, the person who's earned the right, she's gonna be mad, but don't worry about it because you are strong. I got you. And it's like, this would never happen, and this is ridiculous writing. So I'm just gonna assume that this is, you know, her perspective, because that's the only way I can justify it to myself. But I find this style of storytelling so frustrating because it is all exposition, it is all telling, there is no showing. We keep hearing about what the Atreides did, we don't see it. Show me a flashback of that. No, instead they show me flashbacks of just like meandering and talking, and like, I want to take a moment to think about what happened in this episode. Okay, I'm done. So, what happened in this episode? I gotta check my tweets. I tweeted a lot. Let's see what happened in this episode, because I think this was a really, really bad episode, and this is the mid-season break now. Technically, there are 6 episodes. This was the 3rd. This stinks. This is a real stinker. All right, let's see. Let's find my tweets. Oh yeah, so I want to talk about the fact that the granddaughter of Mother Superior, the one that took the agony last week, she's still sort of in a suspended animation, and it's supposed to be this really big deal, but you know, it's like stupid. It's so dumb. She's in like a glass case. She looks like Snow White, you know? And it's like, Tula, you know, she's willing to kill all those Atreides, but she won't let this one go, even though she died doing something that kills a bunch of them. Like, a bunch of them died during the agony. It's well known that you could die during the agony. That's why Tula had conversations with her about it before she took the agony, that she was like, listen, you know, you could die, right? And her and Valia had talked about it, and Valia was like, listen, you know, it's gotta go down. So it did go down, and they got the information that they wanted, right? But then she died, and so this one, she just won't let her go. And in the flashback, we learn that she's willing to just kill tons and tons of people, but she's not gonna let this girl who died, she's not gonna let her go, because I guess she has a heartbeat. The whole episode was about euthanasia. They kill a horse, they kill all the Atreides, but they won't let the granddaughter go. They won't let the granddaughter go. No. Okay, alright, cool beans. What I don't like about when Valia finally takes the agony is that the interpretation includes the initial shot that looks like the blue stuff going in the veins, and so that's right from Villeneuve's movie. And then there's like a bunch of bad CGI ghosts. It's like super lame, and then she just wakes up the next day in the freezing cold snow. She's not dead, and her sister's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, oh yeah, I just did the agony, I was pretty sick.
So I think that was lame. I really like these frozen hairy whales. There's like this wet market that the Harkonnens work at, and or that's just where they get their bacon from. But there's like really hairy whales. It's pretty cool. There's like big ribs and stuff. It reminds me of the Flintstones. Pretty dope. That's the best part of the episode is the hairy whale wet market. There was this other part in the episode where they subscribed to the Film School Dad channel on YouTube because they're just like huge fans. I thought that was cool. That was like one of my favorite parts. There were a lot of speeches also in the flashbacks, and a lot of it is Valia just telling people that she's like, I deserve this. I deserve it. And I just feel like, I feel bad for the actors because I'm sure they could have really done a better job with better writing. But okay, I don't have a ton to say. Here's how I'm gonna end things, because I don't want to go on and on and on. There's not much to say about the episode because not a lot happened in the episode. The Emperor's not in the episode. The guy who can burn people with his brain, he's not in the episode. And he was really the only interesting thing going on in Dune, and I didn't really even find him very interesting. So I'm kind of good on Travis Fimmel, and I don't care about any of it. They're all stinkers. This is a boring show. I've watched 3 episodes. The only reason why I'm still watching it is because it's Dune, and because I hoped that it would be a little bit better, but it's not. Denis Villeneuve is still working on Dune Messiah, so it's all gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. If you love Dune, then hopefully you feel one of 2 ways. Either you hate me and you love this show and you're happy, or you understand that the show is a stinker and you just the movie's gonna come out next year, 2026. With only one more episode to go in HBO's Dune Prophecy, episode 5 comes in as the series' best. I finally like an episode. I've been watching this show since episode 1 and I've done 2 reviews so far. Finally, something interesting is going on this show, and I am excited to have watched it, and I am even more excited to talk about it. While not perfect, episode 5 was the best the series has given us so far. This week's episode of Dune Prophecy, we had a higher quality of show. Not every scene, not every actor, and not every moment, but we definitely had a step up in story, in momentum, and I do feel like the show is finally going somewhere, although I'm still a little unsure of where that is. I like where the show ended as well. If you're not here for spoilers, I'll save those for later in the show, but I do want to say I like how the show ended, and I really liked how it began. That first scene outside where the Emperor was talking to his new troops and Bashar. He made Desmond Hart his new Bashar of the Ninja Turtle Foot Clan. I'm sorry. I think that the army costumes could have been a little bit better. They're just like a bunch of like ninjas with masks. It's silly, but whatever. It's fine. They're background characters. I get it, but I think they look silly. Anyway, the show opens up in space. We get some spaceships. The CGI is nice. It doesn't look too horrible. Outside, when the Emperor is speaking, there are some great long shots of the castle or whatever it is that they live in. It all looks great. It does have a good Dune feel, and I finally started to kind of get a vibe like, oh, all right, I kind of like this show right now. I mean, I have not been the biggest fan of all the episodes and all the moments, but I come back every week hoping to be, excited. So, and here I was, and I'm happy to say that. So I was feeling it, and I gotta say I have a couple of issues. One is that I truly feel like the acting is inconsistent. Now, I'm not gonna do big research. I'm not gonna say all the actors' names, but we're gonna know who we're talking about here, okay? I mean, we're just talking as fans. The guy who plays Desmond Hart, I think that he is a good actor, but I feel like he's kind of like bored. When I'm watching him, I feel like he's just like playing around. He's always like whispering, or he's kind of like dancing around. I mean, he's having fun being in the show, but I don't think he's giving it. Like, I mean, he's, you're doing a good job, dude, but like, I see you. I see what you're doing. You're having a good time. But then we've got people like the guy who's playing the Atreides Swordmaster, and every scene he's in, every time he talks, it's some of the worst stuff on the whole show. It's rough. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's, I don't know. Let's say I'm on Team Harkonnen on this one, but I don't like it when he's on screen. He annoys me, and the whole storyline is lame anyway. It's stupid. He's like, I want to kill everybody, but I don't, and I love her, but I'm not sure. It's a boring storyline. There are more interesting things in the show, and barely, but this is some of the worst stuff. Also, I'm just gonna call him Kid Carino, right? But the Emperor's son, who he had with one of the Bene Gesserit, one of the sisters, I'm sorry, they're not the Bene Gesserit yet. Kid Carino, he is also consistently annoying on screen. Near the end of the show, he arrests someone. Again, spoilers, right? I'll leave that for later, but he has someone arrested and he sort of does like a curtsy bow, kind of curtsies. He's like, haha, I got you arrested. And it's just let's call it a bold choice. I'll be kind. I'll say it's a bold choice to curtsy when you've had your friend arrested. So I thought that was, didn't love that choice. And then I think you've got some great actors. The guy who plays the new head Harkonnen, the one who is kind of a double agent. He's working with Valia and he's also working with Desmond Hart. I like him as an actor. I think he does a great job. I think he kind of feels like he would fit in on a Game of Thrones show. He's sort of got that like face and vibe, and he does a fine job. You know, he's not the best actor in the world, but I do sort of think that he is the best actor on the show. I don't know, I can't put my finger on it exactly, but I do think that he is giving it his all. Whatever that means, he's doing a good job. He's trying. He's happy to be on the show, I think. So, you know, I don't know. Valia wasn't in this episode too much, and that was just fine with me. And Tula had an interesting storyline. So her and Lila were in the basement with one of her acolytes, and they were talking to the old Mother Superior, Mother Rakella, and they were doing some science experiments. It was sort of like a scene out of No Way Home, and Mother Rakella's got her like goggles on, and they're doing stuff, and I don't know. It's silly, but you know, I think you know, they all did a nice job. Anyway, the story is interesting. I want to get into spoilers now. Okay, this isn't going to be a long video. I did like this episode. This was a better episode than I think a lot of the show, and I'm excited to see where we're gonna go in the finale. But if you haven't seen the show yet and you were wondering if you should watch it, you can stop here and then go watch the show. I'm going to talk about spoilers. I'm going to talk about spoilers now. Okay, so spoilers. The end of the show, we find out that Desmond Hart is Tula's son. Sounds like she left him out in the wild or whatever. She obviously had a kid with the Atreides after she killed everyone. She did have relations with him that one time, and I guess she got pregnant, and Desmond Hart is her son. And you know what? Yeah, I'm here for it. I think it's cool. It's a good twist. It's interesting. Some people were thinking that he was a Gola, which in the book is sort of like a remade undead soul with some sort of memory. Golas are cool. Golas get very interesting in the Dune Chronicles, for sure. I won't give any spoilers for that, but Golas are fine, but he's not a Gola. I mean, I guess he technically could be a we don't know. We don't know what's happened to him, but it sounds like Tula is his mom, and that's cool. So let's find out where things are going with this. I also dig that the Queen finally just said like, all right, let's do it, Desmond Hart, because they've been flirting hard for a while, and the Queen's got to get hers. I think it's funny that they had to sort of make it okay for the Queen to get hers. So in this episode, the Emperor is also cheating, and he kisses this Bene Gesserit, this sister first. So, you know, the Emperor does it first, so now it's okay for the Queen to be horny, but like, whatever, dude. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter. This show started out with softcore porn. I think it's all awful. I think it's unnecessary, and if you're gonna do it right. This episode, I think, did do it right. This is one of the better episodes of the entire series so far, and I've been kind of harsh on the show, and so I'll give it its flowers where I think due, and I do think that it's due here. I will give the flowers. So here's the thing: this was a decent episode. It wasn't an A+, but I think maybe a solid. I think it's a B. So I want to talk about more spoilers, right? So the arrest of the Atreides. I'm a little confused by this. So there is a moment where Atreides Swordmaster is by himself, and Desmond Hart and his army of the Ninja Turtles Foot Clan, they show up to his sword room, and it looks like Desmond Hart is about to arrest him, and then Kid Carino walks in, and Desmond Hart's like, you lucked out, and then they all leave, right? Later on, when Kid Carino finds out, he just like sees a map in his bag. He just figures out that you're a bad guy. Kid Carino has him arrested later, not by Desmond Hart, but just by the Foot Clan, and Kid Carino does this, he curtsies. So like, he ruins the whole thing. He like, I think it's great that he was willing to arrest his friend, and
spit in his face or something. Like, do something awesome. Like, why did you curtsy? I will never understand this. This was this kind of stuff ruins the show. You see, there's someone directing the show, and that person didn't go, hey, maybe spit in his face. You know, like maybe throw like dirt in his face and spit on the floor or something. Curtsy? I think curtsy is for one of the takes that ends up on the cutting room floor. I don't love it. I feel like it ruins the scene, and I just feel like it is proof that the show needs someone better at the helm. You know, I do think it needs someone better at the helm, and I think there's some good aspects of the show, but I don't think it's being handled well. Let's talk about a few more spoilers here. So there's a scene where Lila is, you know, she's being possessed by some of her ancestors, and in the books, it's well explained, and so it makes sense to someone who understands it, but I just don't know if it makes sense to someone who doesn't understand it. Why is she so easily possessed by her grandmother? I think it's a bit of a stretch for someone who doesn't know. But anyway, if you do know, it plays for some of the more interesting parts of the episode. And yet I still think it's handled weird because Lila is sort of treated like a psychiatric patient. They've got her bound to a table. She's asleep, and then she's awake, and then she's someone else, and then she's a different... I just think it's a little awkward. It really does feel like a psychiatric patient, right? Because I think when she's introduced, they open that little window in the door, and she kind of like screams at the window. You know, they kind of play it for like a jump scare, but it's kind of weird when you think about it. I think the whole thing's a little awkward. I don't know if it's handled well. I understand what they're doing. I just don't know if I love the way they're doing it. That's all I'm saying. I'm trying to think of what I should be saying about the princess, but her storyline's kind of boring too. Really, her whole story is that she's not sure if she's on her family's side or the Atreides. It's not really that. She doesn't have like a really... I just think her whole thing is... I'm not really sure what her whole thing is. That's the truth. I don't have much to say about her storyline. I wish I did. So let's leave it at that. I wish I had more to say about her storyline. I'm looking forward to next week. I can't wait to see where the show's going, and I'm happy to say that Dune Prophecy is finally starting to trend, in my opinion, into a higher quality show. It's not perfect, but it was mildly entertaining tonight. I appreciate that because, you know, I don't have too much time to waste. Obviously, I've got enough time to waste to record this. There are a litany of videos online explaining the finale of Dune Prophecy. I don't want to do that here. I want to talk about what I remember and what I feel, and that tends to be my issue with the show. When I think back on Dune Part 1 and Part 2, I remember a lot about the films. I remember Paul Atreides' father talking to him on the cliff sides of Caladan, standing over the tombs of their fathers. I remember the advice Leto gave his son. I remember the dread that the Atreides felt as they left their planet. I remember the fear as they landed in Arrakis, an unknown world filled with violence, war, and worms. I remember the betrayal of the Harkonnens and the Corrinos, a single night war that ruined the Atreides and took Arrakis back. I remember how the love of a mother, Jessica, betrayer of the Bene Gesserit, followed her heart and gave her husband a son, Paul, possibly an accidental Kwisatz Haderach. Did Jessica just want to give Leto the son he wanted, or did she believe she could help wield the Kwisatz Haderach into existence? We may find out more in Dune Messiah, but that's the thing, because I'm interested to find out more about these characters. I want to know what happens to Gurney Halleck. I want to know what happens to Stilgar next. I can't wait to see where we go with Chani. There's so many questions we have going into Dune Messiah, but the question I have for HBO is, what questions are we going to be answering in Dune Prophecy Season 2? We learned a lot of things in the last episode, but most of it was just reiterating what we had already figured out. We knew that the Harkonnen sisters were murderers. We now see it on a grander scale. We already knew that Desmond Hart was Tula's son. We find that out again in the finale. We learned that the most interesting thing in Dune Prophecy, the two blue eyes, were actually not even eyes at all, but just the single robotic light of a surgeon that was working on Desmond Hart post being swallowed by a worm. It's not actually that interesting. And so the questions that I have again are, what questions are we answering in Season 2? I know what I'm looking forward to in Dune Messiah, but I don't know what I'm looking forward to in Dune Prophecy Season 2. So, does Dune Prophecy deserve a second season? You tell me. Please comment below. What do you think? I want to know, because obviously we know what I think. I'm disappointed. I love the movies. I love Villeneuve. I can't wait for Messiah, but here I am, a fan of the books, a fan of the Dune Chronicles, And unfortunately, at the end of a 6-episode arc, not a fan of Dune Prophecy. So, comment below what you think of Dune Prophecy versus Dune Parts 1 and Part 2. Do you feel like the series was well integrated with the films? What are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Hit that bell for notifications and stay tuned for my next video. The algorithm says you want to watch this, so check it out. This was Film School Dad.